Have you ever noticed your car taking forever to start right after you refuel? Or maybe a strong gas smell lingering around even when the car is parked? Sometimes you'll see that dreaded check engine light pop up on your dashboard, and when you scan it, it throws codes like PO440 or PO446, leaving you wondering what that even means. Well, in many cases, those signs point straight to a part that most drivers don't think about until it fails. The EVAP canister. Welcome to AutoVFix. Today we'll go into great detail about the EVAP canister, including its functions, reasons for failure, symptoms you may experience when it begins to malfunction, how to diagnose it, how to proceed if you're thinking about replacing it, and the potential cost of the entire repair. We'll even talk about what you can do to prevent premature failure and save yourself some frustration down the road. By the end of this explanation, you'll understand this little box better than most mechanics who just swap it out and move on. So let's start at the very beginning. What exactly is this EVAP canister? EVAP stands for Evaporative Emissions Control, and the canister is basically the heart of that system. Think of it as your car's recycling unit for gasoline vapors. Gasoline doesn't just sit quietly in your tank. It constantly evaporates, especially on hot days. If those vapors were allowed to escape, not only would you be wasting fuel, but you'd also be releasing harmful hydrocarbons into the atmosphere. That's where the EVAP canister steps in. It's usually a black plastic box filled with activated charcoal, and its job is to capture and hold those vapors until the engine is ready to burn them. Instead of losing energy into thin air, your car reuses it. It's a clever bit of engineering that helps your car meet emission standards, while also squeezing a little extra efficiency from the fuel you pay for. The canister itself is usually mounted near the fuel tank, often behind one of the rear wheels, tucked up out of sight. It's connected by a network of hoses and valves that make up the rest of the EVAP system. Here's how it works in simple terms. Vapors build up in your fuel tank. Those vapors travel through a vent line into the canister, where the activated charcoal traps and stores them. When your engine is running under the right conditions, a purge valve opens up and allows the engine to suck those stored vapors into the intake manifold, where they're mixed with air and burned during combustion. The whole process is seamless, and you'd never know it's happening. When everything's working correctly, no fumes escape into the air, and your car runs a little cleaner. But when the system breaks down, those stored vapors either leak out where they shouldn't, or the engine fails to pull them in properly, and that's when problems begin. Now, EVAP canisters don't just fail overnight. They wear down or get damaged for specific reasons. One of the biggest causes of EVAP canister failure is simply physical damage. These canisters live under the car, right where rocks, road debris, and winter salt can hit them. Over time, they can crack or even break apart, especially if you drive in rough conditions. Another common culprit is contamination. Dust, dirt, and even spider webs can clog the lines that feed into the canister, and manufacturers like Mazda have even had recalls over it. Overfilling your gas tank is another big one. You know how some people like to keep pumping fuel even after the nozzle clicks off? That's a mistake. The charcoal inside isn't designed to handle liquid, only vapor. Once it gets soaked with gasoline, it can no longer absorb properly, and the canister is basically ruined. Moisture is another enemy. Water in your fuel or condensation from humidity can saturate the charcoal just like gasoline can, leaving it ineffective. And of course, there's simple wear and tear. Over many years and tens of thousands of miles, the charcoal loses its ability to absorb, and the valves connected to the canister can stick or fail. So what happens when the canister goes bad? The symptoms are actually pretty noticeable once you know what to look for. The most obvious one is the check engine light, and the canister is often the guilty party. Another big sign is trouble refueling. If you find the gas pump keeps clicking off every few seconds while you're trying to fill up, that usually means the canister or one of its valves is clogged and not allowing vapors to vent properly. A strong smell of gasoline around the car is another classic indicator. That's those vapors escaping because they're not being captured. Poor fuel economy can creep up too, because instead of recycling those vapors, you're just losing them. Hard starting after refueling is another very common symptom. You shut off the pump, get back in the car, turn the key, and it cranks and cranks before it finally starts. That happens because the EVAP system is temporarily flooded and throws off the air-fuel mixture. Rough idling or stalling can occur in similar ways, and if you live in a state or province that requires emissions testing, a faulty canister will almost always trigger a failed test, because the system is directly tied to emissions output. Other signs include hissing sounds from excess tank pressure, inaccurate fuel gauge readings, or even a dedicated gas cap warning light on newer cars. If you notice more than one of these issues, especially the smell of gas combined with refueling problems, the canister should move to the top of your suspect list. Now, let's pause here for a moment. If you're finding this breakdown helpful so far, take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to Auto VFix. We put a lot of time into creating these detailed, step-by-step guides so you can save money and keep your car in top shape. Subscribing helps us bring you even more practical fixes and tips. Diagnosing an EVAP canister isn't always straightforward, but there are some practical steps you can take. The best tool is an OBD2 scanner, ideally one that can read EVAP-specific monitors. Plug it in, check the codes, and see what's stored. Codes that mention large leak, small leak, or purge flow are strong hints. Some DIY mechanics use a smoke machine to test the system, pumping smoke into the EVAP lines to see where it leaks out. That's a professional grade test. Another quick check you can do at home is blowing air gently into the small port of the canister. If air flows through easily, the canister might still be okay. If it's completely blocked, that's a sign the charcoal has collapsed or become saturated. Keep in mind, though, that canisters generally can't be repaired. Once they're clogged or cracked, replacement is the only solution. So how urgent is it to replace a bad EVAP canister? The truth is, your car will usually still run fine in the short term. You might even be tempted to ignore the problem since it doesn't immediately strand you on the side of the road. But leaving it unfixed can have consequences. Over time, fuel vapors that aren't managed properly can damage other parts of the emission system, including the catalytic converter, which is far more expensive to replace. You'll also likely fail emissions inspections, and in some cases, an unchecked vapor leak can even create a fire hazard if vapors collect near hot components. So while it's not as urgent as a brake failure, it's not something to put off indefinitely. If you decide to tackle replacement yourself, the process isn't too complicated, but it does take some care. First, gather the tools you'll need: a ratchet wrench and socket set, a jack and jack stands or a lift, a flathead screwdriver, some penetrating oil for rusty bolts, and of course a new EVAP canister, along with any new hoses you might need. Safety glasses and gloves are a good idea too. Start by disconnecting the battery to avoid any electrical shorts. Raise the rear of the car securely and locate the canister, usually near the fuel tank. Spray down any bolts or clips with penetrating oil because they're often rusty from being exposed underneath the car. Remove the electrical connector and label the vent hoses so you know where they go when you put everything back together. Then unbolt and unclip the old canister. Installing the new one is just the reverse. Bolt it in place, reconnect the hoses and wiring, lower the car, and reconnect the battery. Clear the error codes with your scanner and take the car for a 10-mile test drive to confirm the fix. If no lights come back on, you've done the job right. So, what about cost? That depends heavily on the car you drive. For most vehicles, the part itself runs anywhere from $200 to $600. Aftermarket versions can sometimes be found for $100 to $200, and salvage yards are even cheaper, though that's a bit of a gamble. Labor usually adds another $100 to $200, depending on how rusty or awkward the mounting location is. All in, you're looking at anywhere from $235 on the low end to $1,270 on the high end. To give a real-world example, a 2010 Toyota Corolla EVAP canister at the dealership runs about $380 to $450. Add $120 in labor at an independent shop, and you're in the $400 to $550 range. By contrast, if the issue is simply a loose or worn gas cap, that's a $20 to $50 fix. Prevention is always better than repair, so how do you keep your EVAP canister healthy in the first place? The number one tip is to stop topping off your fuel tank. When the pump clicks, let it stop. Overfilling is the fastest way to kill a canister. Make sure your gas cap is always tightened until it clicks, because a loose cap not only lets vapors escape, but can cause dirt and moisture to get sucked into the EVAP system. Replace your gas cap if it's cracked or the seal looks worn. Pay attention to how your car smells and behaves after refueling, because catching an issue early can save the canister before it's completely ruined. If you live in an area with lots of dirt roads or heavy winter salting, inspect the underside of your car every once in a while to check for rust, cracked hoses, or a damaged canister. And if your car ever has a check engine light for EVAP issues, don't ignore it. Even if the car seems fine, it's a warning sign that the system isn't working as it should. So, to wrap this all up, the EVAP canister may be one of the least glamorous parts of your vehicle, but it's absolutely vital for keeping fuel vapors under control, saving you money at the pump, and helping the environment. When it fails, the signs are there. Check engine codes, trouble refueling, gas smells, poor fuel economy, and rough starts after filling up. Diagnosis takes some patience, but with a scanner and a little observation, you can usually pinpoint the problem. Replacement is straightforward with basic tools, and while it's not the cheapest repair, it's a lot better than ignoring the issue and risking damage to more expensive parts like the catalytic converter. Take care of it, avoid topping off your tank, and you'll likely never have to think about this part again. But if you do, now you know exactly what's going on and how to fix it. And before we finish, if this breakdown saved you some confusion or helped you plan your repair, consider sharing it with a friend who's been fighting that mysterious check engine light. Subscribe for more in-depth DIY repair guides and maintenance tips, and let me know in the comments if you've ever had to replace your EVAP canister. What symptoms did you see and how much did it end up costing? Your experience might just help someone else. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.